This is the story of lawmen who secretly ran the most dangerous criminal operations in the very counties they swore to protect. From the gold rush era straight through to 2025, America keeps producing sheriffs who pinned on the badge each morning and operated as the biggest criminals in their jurisdiction by night. 68 sitting sheriffs faced personal misconduct allegations during 2015 and 2016 alone. And since 2020, criminal activity tied to sheriff's offices has surfaced in 46 states. That pattern holds decade after decade, and the reason comes down to how the office actually works. Sheriffs answer to voters, not supervisors. They control budgets, run both policing and jail operations, and across most of the country, nobody holds clear authority to remove them, even after they break the law. The stories tell it better than any statistic, and the best place to begin is with a case that became an American legend. The people of Bannack, Montana, elected a soft-spoken young man named Henry Plummer as their sheriff. Plummer checked every box a frontier town could ask for. A former city marshal out of California, politically sharp, a smooth talker who won the election by a wide margin. On top of the sheriff's badge, he secured appointment as Deputy United States Marshal for the territory. What the people of Bannack apparently had no idea about, or so the story goes, was that Plummer secretly led a gang of road agents called the Innocents. Estimates of the gang's size ranged from 20 members to well over 100, and their business was robbing gold shipments across the territory. Plummer's system worked like a closed loop. As sheriff, he knew exactly when miners planned to move gold. Two of his deputies, Buck Stinson and Ned Ray, were both later accused of riding with the gang. Members reportedly identified each other through the password "I am innocent" and wore distinctive neckties knotted in a specific pattern that only insiders recognized. October of 1863 brought the most brazen stretch of violence. Lloyd Magruder and 4 companions were murdered, and $12,000 in gold dust vanished with them. That same month, robbers hit the Peabody and Caldwell stagecoach for $2,800 in gold. A rancher named Conrad Cause made the mistake of mentioning to Sheriff Plummer that he'd be traveling with $5,000 in gold dust, and 2 of Plummer's known associates materialized to target him almost immediately. Someone even attempted to rob a freight train hauling $80,000 in gold dust. Early accounts put the body count above 100 travelers killed by road agents in the fall of 1863 alone. Modern historians have confirmed 8 deaths through documented sources. But the terror running through those mining camps needed no exaggeration. Everything changed in December of 1863 when a young Dutch immigrant named Nicholas Thibault was murdered by a man named George Ives. The community snapped. They held a public trial and hanged Ives on December 21st. And 2 days later, the Vigilance Committee of Alder Gulch came into existence. The men leading it would go on to build Montana itself, including Wilbur Sanders, later Montana's first U.S. Senator, Captain James Williams, and Sidney Edgerton, who became the territory's first governor. Each hanging carried a mysterious calling card, the numbers 3777. Nobody has ever cracked what those numbers mean, and they still appear on Montana Highway Patrol shoulder patches to this day. The real break came when vigilante posses captured a man named Erastus Red Yeager near Rattlesnake Ranch. Staring at his own death, Yeager gave up everything, naming Plummer as the gang's leader and listing every member along with their specific role. Yeager hanged on January 4th, 1864. 6 nights later, between 50 and 75 armed vigilantes rode into Bannack and split into 3 groups. One team pulled Stinson from a saloon, another dragged Ray from a gaming table, and the third found Plummer sick and unarmed at his in-laws' home. All 3 were marched to the town gallows, and this is where the story reaches a detail that sounds invented. Those gallows had been built by Plummer himself for official county executions. Ned Ray went first, cursing and clawing at the rope until his fingers had to be pried loose. Buck Stinson followed, but the knot slipped and he strangled slowly. Plummer went last. According to witnesses, his final words were, "Give me a high drop, boys, a request for a clean death." The vigilantes gave him one, and his neck broke instantly. All 3 bodies froze overnight in temperatures well below 0. Between 21 and 24 men total were hanged by the vigilantes over the weeks that followed. And that's when history gets messy. No physical evidence ever tied Henry Plummer directly to any specific robbery or murder. Red Yeager's confession came from a man about to die, which raises obvious questions about coercion. The main written accounts of this period were authored by vigilante participants who needed to justify extrajudicial killings. There's a political dimension too, since the vigilante leaders were wealthy Republicans while Plummer was a popular Democrat, and vigilante policy allowed them to seize the assets of anyone they executed. Plummer owned valuable mining claims. Historians R.E. Mather and F.E. Boswell summed up the problem decades later. They wrote, "Though there is no evidence that the Bannock sheriff headed an outlaw gang, posterity believed the charge simply because the vigilantes hanged him." A mock trial held in May of 1993 at Virginia City's Madison County Courthouse tested the question one more time, with a real judge presiding and 12 registered voters seated as jurors. The verdict came back deadlocked, 6-6, 130 years of distance, and still nobody could agree on whether Plummer was a criminal mastermind or a victim of frontier mob justice. A few final details worth knowing. No photograph of Henry Plummer survives. His official deputy U.S. Marshal appointment papers arrived shortly after the vigilantes killed him. Electa Bryan, his wife, learned of the execution by letter and spent the rest of her life insisting on his innocence. Decades after the hanging, someone allegedly dug up his body, cut off the head on a dare, and displayed the skull in a Bannock saloon until the building burned down in 1898. Plummer's case lives in legend. What happened in DeKalb County, Georgia, at the turn of the millennium is fully documented, and in some ways, it's worse. Sidney Dorsey served as sheriff of DeKalb County, covering eastern Atlanta, and ran a deeply corrupt operation throughout the late 1990s. When a 23-year police veteran named Derwin Brown challenged him on an explicit anti-corruption platform and won the election, Dorsey's response was to arrange a murder. December 15, 2000, just 3 days before Brown would officially take the office. Brown was driving home from a pre-Christmas party, carrying flowers he'd picked up for his wife Phyllis. As he reached his house, gunfire erupted. At least 10 bullets struck him. Dorsey had recruited the assassins from inside his own department. A deputy named Patrick Cuffey received a handwritten note from Dorsey bearing 4 words: "Kill Derwin Brown." 4 deputies and former employees of Dorsey's private security firm executed the plan. Each promised promotions in return. And when deputies running pre-attack surveillance near Brown's home were spotted by local police, Dorsey personally picked up the phone, told the officers his men were working on undercover surveillance for the sheriff's office, and cleared the path for the killing to proceed. Cuffey flipped and became an informant. On July 10, 2002, a jury convicted Sidney Dorsey of malice murder, 2 RICO counts, violation of oath of office, and 8 counts of theft. The sentence landed at life in prison, plus 23 years. Prosecutors detailed 50 racketeering acts in total, covering 28 acts of theft, 6 of bribery, 4 false statements, solicitation of murder, and acts carried out to make that murder happen. A prison recording captured Dorsey in 2007, saying something that still lingers. His exact words were, "I want someone to say, 'Sidney, you are a murderer. You are accountable, you're responsible. That's what I want." Brown's family won a $776 million civil judgment, and Sidney Dorsey remains behind bars. The Dorsey case carries the most violence, but the Patrick Sullivan case delivers a kind of irony that borders on absurd. Patrick J. Sullivan Jr. held the sheriff's office in Arapahoe County, Colorado, the Denver suburbs, for 5 consecutive terms, stretching from 1984 to 2002. The man's record looked like something from a recruitment poster. Back in 1989, he personally drove a Jeep through a fence to pull 2 deputies and a wounded 17-year-old hostage away from an armed murder suspect. Columbine happened in his jurisdiction, and he played a central role in the investigation. Both George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton knew him by name. The National Sheriff's Association named him Sheriff of the Year in 2001, and the county honored him by putting his name on the jail. Behind all of that, Sullivan was using and distributing methamphetamine, trading it for sex with young men. Two informants set up a meeting at a home in Aurora, and when Sullivan walked through the door, he tossed meth onto the bed and started undressing. Law enforcement arrested him on November 30th, 2011. What followed belongs in a dark comedy. Patrick Sullivan was booked into the Patrick J. Sullivan Jr. Detention Facility, locked inside the jail that carried his own name on the front of the building. A guilty plea on felony meth possession and soliciting prostitution brought 30 days in jail and 2 years probation. But Sullivan couldn't stay clean. Probation violations stacked up fast, including 3 positive meth tests, 4 positive alcohol tests, missed urine samples, and unauthorized trips out of state. A judge resentenced him to 15 months in state prison, and the county scraped his name off the jail. Sullivan died on May 1st, 2021, at 78 years old, and the full dimensions of his double life went with him. The Texas-Mexico border produced what might be the densest concentration of corrupt sheriffs anywhere in American history. Cameron County, Hidalgo County, Starr County, one after another. The men wearing the star turned out to be collecting paychecks from the cartels. Conrado Cantu won the Cameron County Sheriff's race on a populist wave, running under the catchphrase, Animo, which means courage. $10,000. That's what his first bribe cost, and it arrived within a single month of him taking office. While managing a $12 million annual sheriff's budget, Cantu fed drug traffickers intelligence about active investigations, arranged armed deputy escorts for drug loads, and shielded Gulf cartel operations alongside underground casinos. One offer particularly stood out. He told a convicted drug dealer he could arrange an escape for $50,000. Judge Hilda Tagle delivered the sentencing with a line that cut straight through. She told him, "You used your charisma to betray your community. For somebody who hates drugs, you certainly did a lot to help the drug trafficking trade." Cantu received more than 24 years in federal prison. Over in Hidalgo County, Sheriff Brigido Marmolejo Jr. had been the most powerful elected official in the entire Rio Grande Valley, and his corruption read like parody. Marmolejo collected $6,000 a month from jailed drug lord Homero Beltran Aguirre, plus $1,000 for each conjugal visit. And that's where the details get surreal, because Marmolejo personally stood guard outside his own office door while the imprisoned trafficker had sex with both his wife and his secret girlfriend inside. Approximately $151,600 in total bribes flowed his direction, paid out in cash, Rado watches, a Pontiac Trans Am, dried meat, and personal loans. 7 years in federal prison was the sentence. Starr County's Sheriff Raimundo Guerra operated on a different level of betrayal. Guerra sold the names of confidential informants directly to members of Los Zetas, the Gulf Cartel's enforcement wing, at a price of $2,000 to $3,000 per name. Patrol schedules, upcoming operations, and active case files all made their way to cartel contacts, while Guerra filed false paperwork to close investigations tied to trafficking routes. FBI agents working the region had to restrict their own activities in Starr County because they feared Guerra would tip off the cartel the moment he caught wind of their presence. A nationwide sweep, called Operation Carlito's Way, brought him down, and the sentence came to 64 months in federal prison. East Tennessee's Cock County earned the nickname Little Chicago, and it took decades for anyone to do much about it. The county cycled through corrupt sheriffs like a revolving door. Sheriff Tom Odell went down for extortion and bribery alongside state troopers. Sheriff Bobby Stinson caught a federal cocaine trafficking charge and drew 7 years in prison. Sheriff D.C. Ramsey resigned in 2006, citing health reasons, after FBI documents connected him to the protection of illegal gambling and cockfighting operations, though no formal charges ever materialized against him. What finally blew the county wide open was the FBI's Operation Rose Thorn, which ran from 2001 to 2008. 48 federal arrests followed, 8 of them local lawmen, with another 170 people charged for cockfighting, gambling, and illegal liquor production. Investigators found deputies working second jobs as armed cocaine dealers and uncovered the Del Rio cockfighting pit, one of the largest illegal gambling venues in the Southeast, where as many as 700 spectators would pack in on a Saturday night and wager up to $3 million before sunrise. FBI agent Thomas Farrow described how the investigation kept circling back to one place. His words were, "We would talk to the state prosecutors, and they all just kept steering us back to look at Cook County. It was such a bed of corruption that the tentacles went throughout the sheriff's department." An unnamed deputy captured the impossible position from the inside. He told investigators, "You start off so good and then you're told, 'Hey, stay away from the chicken fights, those are the sheriffs. Stay away from the poker machines, those are the chief deputies. Where do you go?'" Whitley County, Kentucky, ran a different flavor of the same poison. Sheriff Lawrence Hodge conspired to push approximately 1,500 oxycodone pills into his community, while running an extortion ring with a defense attorney who steered clients into paying bribes between $2,500 and $50,000. On top of that, Hodge wrote checks to himself from the department's drug and alcohol fund for undercover drug buys that never happened, pocketing nearly $65,000. A state audit turned up a shortage of at least $216,000. Two young local reporters named Samantha and Adam Sulfridge broke the story open, and what they endured for doing it tells you everything about how these operations survive. Credible death threats arrived regularly. Adam once stood on his own front steps, facing associates of the sheriff, one of whom reached for his waistband, and the young reporter drew his own pistol to back them off. Hodges' sentence landed at 15.5 years, federal plus 17 years state, running concurrently, with restitution of $335,188. 15 of his associates also caught convictions. Operation High Roller hit Mississippi in 2024, resulting in the arrest of 20 people, many of them current or former law enforcement officers. Among those arrested were Sheriff Milton Gaston of Washington County and Sheriff Bruce Williams of Humphreys County. FBI agents had spent months posing as members of a Mexican drug cartel, and the officers allegedly provided armed escorts for what they believed were 25-kilogram cocaine shipments rolling along Highway 61 toward Memphis. Bribes ranged from $1,500 to $37,500 per officer. The detail that speaks loudest is how the investigation started. Arrested drug dealers kept complaining to federal agents about having to pay bribes to local law enforcement. The criminals got tired of paying and turned the cops in. U.S. Attorney Clay Joyner described it as a monumental betrayal of public trust. All 20 defendants entered not guilty pleas and are awaiting trial, which means these remain charges, not convictions. Legal scholar Seth Staunton has traced this problem back to its roots and landed on a sharp irony. Sheriffs originally had a direct financial incentive in raising money because that's how they earned their pay. And Staunton put it bluntly when he noted, "That incentive problem is why the Sheriff of Nottingham was a bad guy." Miria Holman, a political scientist at Tulane University, framed it in structural terms. She described a combination of large budgets and little information that provides an environment where corruption is certainly possible, if not probable. From Henry Plummer, swinging on gallows he built with his own hands in 1864, to FBI agents kicking down doors in the Mississippi Delta in 2025, the pattern refuses to break. One person holds enormous power with almost no oversight. Sheriffs run unopposed in race after race. Incumbents carry roughly a 45 percentage point advantage over any challenger. Connecticut eventually abolished the position entirely because the corruption grew too deep to reform. The distance between the law and the lawless has always been narrower than anyone wants to admit. And when the person holding the badge turns out to be the one breaking it, sometimes the only people capable of stopping them are a condemned outlaw trading a confession for a quicker death, a young reporter standing on his porch with a pistol, or a drug dealer who simply got tired of paying bribes. If this video caught your attention, subscribing helps more people find it. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and thanks for watching.